Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. You know, I was looking around, as I always do on the interwebs, and I saw something that's very disturbing today. Mike from Mr. Guns and Gear, or Mike, who is Mr. Guns and Gear, released a video tonight about the ATF going around in Arizona, going to people and trying to confiscate their forced open trigger or forced out trigger, whatever, it's FOT triggers. They're forced reset triggers. Now, there's a couple of reasons why this is disturbing. One, they had information that this person had this device already, so there's the legalities around how they found that out. They didn't go into specifics. Two, in the video that Mr. Guns and Gear shared, he showed that the ATF agents tried to basically entrap the person when they were questioning them outside of their business. Now, it doesn't take a huge leap nowadays to think that a law enforcement agency would actually look out to try to entrap you and try to get you into a bind. Now, I'm concerned, and I think everybody should be concerned, with how these agents know what you've purchased. They had to have some sort of database. They had to get some sort of data from where these items were purchased. Now, I do not own one of these. I've never saw the idea around them. Basically, a forced open trigger, I think, is very close to a binary trigger. It's great for split times if you're a competitive shooter, from what I understand, because that's the only... I've talked to several other shooters to see what they use them for. Other than they're just fun, and it's, okay for people to have cool things in the, it used to be anyway, in the 2A. Now, there's been some more developments at the Illinois case that it's interesting. The FPC is the guys that are going after them to try to get this overturned. And there's a case that they're mentioning several times called Stapler versus the U.S., and this case dates back to 1994, and it ruled in our favor, meaning that they ruled that semi-automatic weapons were not illegal or could not be deemed a machine gun. Now, this could come back and help us, but at the same time, other things I'm seeing, there's PA bill, House Bill, Pennsylvania House Bill 586, where they're requiring, if this passes the House in Pennsylvania, they're going to require serial numbers both on the brass and on the bullet, and it has to be unique to every 50-round lot. Now, I don't know of any manufacturer, period, ammunition manufacturer that could keep up with that, nor would they want to gear up and tool up to do that. So what does that mean? It means PA will eventually run out of ammunition, because according to this House bill, if passed, you also have to get rid of your ammunition that you already have that does not comply with these new rules, if it passes, by January 1st of 2024. So now you have a weapon but no ammunition. Now, this is where I think that the left is going to go. They're going to go after ammunition and ammunition-feeding devices such as magazines to try to get us from enjoying the Second Amendment, or actually having the Second Amendment. I think that unless some court cases go our way, specifically the ones about Chevron deference that are in play right now, we're going to see a lot of people stripped of their rights in the United States. Getting back to that forced out trigger or forced open trigger, or whatever it was, the FOT triggers, the fact that the ATF went to these places, to this person's house or business, and actually attempted to get this device, if they had it, without a warrant is bad, okay? Second off, my advice to anyone that is going to have interactions with the ATF, especially nowadays, is simply shut up. Do not give them any information. deal with a lawyer. That's the only way you were getting around this anymore. Yes, that's going to be costly. Yes, it's going to reach into a lot of things that we don't want to get into. Court cases are extremely expensive and they're extremely long and drawn out. However, all you have to do is look at Matt Hoover, who just had a device that the ATF said, or not even a device, a key card, the auto key card, who said it was legal, and then they changed the idea. Now, in that video that Mike shared, one of the things that they showed was they tried to actually trip them up. So at first the agent literally said, it's okay if you have these, just give them up right now. Okay? Give these triggers to us and we'll be good. Then later on, the same agent says that if you do have these devices, it's illegal and you are facing jail time. So basically what that agent was trying to do was trip them up and say, well, you admitted to being guilty when you admitted you had the device in the first place, if the person had done that. So we're no longer at a point where you're innocent until proven guilty, especially with the ATF. Now, at the same time the ATF is doing this, they're being investigated for fraud, and being convicted, actually, is what it looked like, that they had been fleecing the American taxpayer to the tune of millions of dollars because they were falsifying how much they were working. So these agents that show up, they have such a thing as being able to accept what's going on and go along with it, or back off and say no. In this case, the agent in the film said, I really don't want to be here. Absolutely he did. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been there, period. He would have found something else to do. The other thing that's kind of telling, and Mike mentions this also, is that they don't have body cams on. So in this day and age, with law enforcement, not having a body cam is kind of an alarm bell, because that means they don't want the public to see what they're doing. And the ATF is about as popular as the clap right now. And the reason why that is because they keep going after innocent people. And more people are getting smart and realizing that the ATF aren't our friends. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at the stuff that's going on in larger cities where people are being pushed on subway tracks and getting killed. There's a lady who was protesting the police, who's kind of an anarchist, but she refused to call for help in any way, shape, or form. She was killed on her way to go to a protest. If you haven't left those larger cities, you're kind of behind the eight ball. And, a lot of people say, well, it's so easy to say that, but reality is that the larger cities are going to fall, if they haven't already. If you look at Washington State, and you look at what's going on in Seattle, and you're looking at what's going on in New York, and you're looking at what's going on in San Francisco or LA, and you see these large homeless populations with lots and lots of people that are drug addicts that are doing drugs in open air, hard drugs. We're talking about fentanyl, cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine in open air. These are drugs that have repercussions that are, they're super addictive. The odds that when you get on something like methamphetamine and you getting off are something like 25% that you actually succeed in getting completely off. And that's because they're that addictive. And fentanyl is just as bad, but fentanyl will kill you. New Mexico, we've made the news again for one of the largest fentanyl pill busts in U.S. history in New Mexico. I say it often, and I mean it, stay strapped or get clapped. That seems to be the case. More and more when you see things popping off, you need to be able to defend yourself. You need to be able to stop a bleed if it happens to you or someone you know. I've noticed that more and more people are coming out and saying, hey, I guess I'm going to have to be a gun guy now. You know, it's telling that the federal government doesn't want you to have rifles specifically. That's why they're going after AR-15s. And the reason for that is, if you look at Afghanistan, you look at Iraq, you look at Vietnam, it's because that's standoff distance that the American military would have to overcome to get to you. You know, you could stand off at 300 or 400 yards and take your shots, and then they have to deal with that. That slows down their advance. That slows down their agenda. It's very telling, if you ask me. That's why they're going after rifles specifically. That's why they're going after the AR, the AK, because these are the most ubiquitous rifles in the United States that are capable of doing the job if we had to actually stand up to tyranny. And again, it doesn't look like anyone is home in a lot of these large leftist strongholds. I live in one. You know, I live in New Mexico. I can say that my city isn't a leftist stronghold, but my state is. Right now, Title 42 is about to expire, and right now there's a huge influx of migrants coming across the border, so much so that Biden's administration has tipped these people off to any law enforcement agents going in to stop them, so that they disappear, so that they cannot have to deal with law enforcement. Not that that's a big deal anyway for these people, because migrants have been able to come across the country for years now, for at least a year now, get a little packet and go farther into the country. And now we're expecting something like 400 or 650,000 at one shot. That's going to be a shot in the arm to everyone. You will see this stuff happening here. There are reports of Russians being apprehended at the southern border. You know, that doesn't set well with us trying to aid the Ukrainian side of their conflict. Hopefully these are Russians that fled Russia because they didn't want to fight. But if these guys are actually Russians that wanted to fight, it's a great way to infiltrate the country coming from the southern border that isn't being policed. There has been reports, this report I was looking at specifically was from Jorge Ventura, where they had actually caught Russians with Mexican nationals or Guatemalan nationals and kids, so that they could get across the border easier because there were kids in the caravan or in this particular group that was trying to get through. Man, you know, when you look at the economy and you go, what is going on? This looks like a controlled demolition. There's no other way to put it. You have people that have put things in play, and it's all happening in a rapid pace. Maybe Trump won in 2016 was an accident, and that their plan was disrupted. You know, I watched Timcast. I mentioned that several times, but one of the things I thought was hilarious is tonight's Timcast. Phil Labonte said something very, very profound, and it actually hit me really hard. The fact that the CIA exists lends credence to any conspiracy theory that's out there. I mean, there are still people that don't believe that Operation Mockingbird didn't happen, or that any of these other little CIA ventures didn't happen, and we know for a fact they did. In the 80s, the CIA smuggled cocaine and heroin into the United States, and parts of the black community were ravaged by crack cocaine in the 80s and 90s, and now we're seeing heroin in the same vein. You know, I have personal experience with friends that were overseas in Afghanistan where they were tasked with guarding poppy fields. You know, that was their task for spreading or helping fight terrorism, let's put it that way. Same thing I can say that I had friends in Baghdad or in in Iraq that were guarding oil fields. You know, and you wonder why there's a recruitment problem now in the military. You guys have, both the Army has very woke ads to get people to enlist. Now the Navy has a drag queen as their ambassador to help get people to enlist in the Navy. You know, it doesn't make a lot of sense because our military is usually designed around putting holes in people and making them go away. We want the biggest, I guess, Chad alpha dudes in the military to be able to do that, to defend our country. That said, is that what our country is? You know, I mean, when we spread freedom, or are we spreading freedom, or are we just helping spread the industrial military complex? You know, this is a very short leap of thought right now. You know, after COVID, there has been a lot of people, myself included, that woke up to the harsh realities of our government, you know, to see how much they lied to you. For 3 years, they told you that basically a common cold was going to kill you and everyone you knew, and a lot of people went along with that. There's a lot of people like me that was like, that doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense. And the science isn't supporting that from a lot of global perspective. I mean, if we had spent more time looking at the Swedish numbers and the Swedish data, maybe the United States would be better off than what it is now. You know, inflation's somewhere around 14 or 15%. That's supposed to keep going until the next generation comes in to help fill the labor market out, because the United States has, the boomer class is retiring finally. You know, now is Generations X's time. We are the guys that are the high producers in the labor market, so they say. And a lot of us simply checked out and started making our own businesses, and we don't want to work in the labor market anymore. You know, we're in different places when we have the government willingly going after people for having something that's secured in their Second Amendment, or when they're willing to get out and say something and say, this is wrong. You know, if you oppose the narrative. You know, there's more coming out about the shooting in Dallas, Texas, even as I speak. You know, they've branded Tim Pool as a far-right neo-Nazi backer when he's kind of a centrist at best. You know, he is not a far-right guy. He's just recently, in the last couple years, came around to accepting that the 2A is for everybody. You know, we need to be very careful as we march forward in our lives and determine what laws we're going to listen to. You know, laws, you know, slavery was legal. I've said this before too. You know, the Holocaust was legal. Are you going to go along with it the second time around? You know, there is some hard stuff coming up. We're facing the dangers of AI. You know, I'm kind of, being a former IT guy, kind of interested in the IT, the AI debate in like what jobs could it replace, but also what if it just makes people stupider? And what I mean by that is, imagine your average IQ 70 person being able to make whatever TV show that they like and make it go on for infinity, to where they don't have to go out anywhere. They can just watch their show. You know, AI is catering to that sect of people that are okay with living in the Matrix. And I think more and more there's a larger population of people that are more than willing to do that, than actually get out and do something and make something of their life and live their life. You know, it's interesting that it's taken me 45 years to determine a lot of these things and make sure that I want to be out of the Matrix. You know, I podcast, as I say, because it's a hobby, and I look at this research stuff. This is an outgrowth of me just doing my normal routine. You know, I'm very plugged into the news. At least I like to think so. I check several sources daily just to see what's going on in the world, or what I used to think was going on in the world. Nowadays, I look at it and go, what's the story behind the story? You know, Tucker Carlson came out again today with a video, and it had over 5 million views after like 10 minutes of being on Twitter. He announced that he's going to do a show on Twitter Live. You know, we're in a different place than where we were even 3 years ago, where there's a lot of information coming out in a lot of different places, and you're going to have to be able to vet it. That's the trouble with AI nowadays, is what's real and what's not. And that same thing goes with the ATF. You know, what happens when they start finding pictures of you that AI created with you with an illegal device or something they've deemed illegal? It's looking to me more and more that the ATF needs to go away, and that it would be better left in, I hate to say it, the FBI's hands or local law enforcement's hands, because these guys don't look like they're out for the American people anymore. They look like they're out to try to get as many people put away as they possibly can, which makes no sense, because as a federal agent, why wouldn't the border be more of an issue than their own populace, to things that have been proven time and time again that the ATF said these were okay? You know, these triggers had to go through the ATF to even be made, to even be ready to be sold. So again, the ATF switched their mindset, or changed their mind, and now something's illegal. You know, that goes back to the pistol brace thing. And the only thing we can hope for is that there's enough people of character left in the courts that this stuff starts getting overruled, and they make it costly as hell for these federal agents to do what they're trying to do. Like, share, subscribe, be great.